no, nothing's wrong. I got a ring. She said, oh my God.
You think you know Steve Harvey? Think again. We know the suits, the mustache, the jokes that make your grandma snort laugh. But there's a side of Steve Harvey most people never see. A side that doesn't crack punchlines. It wipes tears, gives pep talks, and fights hard for second chances. This is the story of Steve Harvey, not the game show host, not the king of comedy, but the father of 7 kids, including 2 daughters born when he had nothing and 3 adopted children he chose to love like his own. And trust me, it's a ride. You're about to find out how one of the world's most famous comedians almost lost it all trying to become the father he wanted to be, and how his journey as a dad is way more dramatic, messy, and heartwarming than most of us realize. By the end of this video, you'll know why Steve calls his kids his greatest miracle, even above his TV empire, his bestsellers, and his billion-dollar smile. But first, let's rewind. It's the 1980s. A young Steve Harvey is just another guy grinding it out, delivering mail, cleaning carpets, sleeping in his car. He's broke, unknown, and dreaming of stages. He's also already a father to twin daughters, Brandy and Carly. And yeah, it wasn't a smooth start. Steve has always been honest about his early failures as a dad. In his words, "I was so focused on making it, I didn't realize I was breaking something else." At just 26, he welcomed his twin girls into the world with his first wife, Marcia. But while he was chasing comedy gigs, hopping from city to city with barely enough gas money, the real cost was time lost with his daughters. And it stung. Brandy and Carly were raised mostly by their mother in Ohio, while Steve scraped by doing stand-up in dive bars. He sent what little money he could. He called when he could, but being there was hard when there was always moving. He's admitted the guilt ate at him, especially as the years passed and the distance grew, not just physical, but emotional. They grew up, and I wasn't there the way I should have been. That's a pain no amount of fame can fix. But here's the thing. Steve never stopped trying. As his career slowly started to gain traction, from his breakout in stand-up to landing roles in shows like Me and the Boys and eventually The Steve Harvey Show, he began making real money. And real time. But money doesn't erase history. It doesn't undo birthdays missed, or tearful phone calls, or that lingering question every estranged parent fears. Do they still need me? Let's talk about Brandy and Carly for a minute. They're not just Steve Harvey's daughters. These women built their own paths. Brandy, for example, is a powerhouse wellness advocate. She launched Beyond Her, a health and lifestyle brand focused on mental, physical, and spiritual growth for women of color. Carly, a speaker and mentor, working in media and wellness spaces, raising her own family. They didn't just grow up, they glowed up. But what's most powerful is how they chose forgiveness. In interviews, Brandy has opened up about the long road to reconnect with her father, the hard conversations, the healing process. Steve didn't just walk back into their lives with a checkbook and a grin. He had to earn his way back in. And he did it the hard way, by showing up, over and over. There's this story Steve tells that hits different. He was hosting Family Feud when he got a text from Carly. She was about to give birth and wanted her dad there. Steve dropped everything and flew across the country to make it in time. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he held his grandbaby for the first time. He wasn't just there for the delivery, he was present, fully. No cameras, no show, just dad. That moment, he says, was a turning point. It's one thing to become a grandfather. It's another to know your daughter wants you there. Now, before we go deeper into the twins' journey in part 2, let's sit with something real for a second. This is the part nobody talks about, especially not celebrities. When you're grinding to build a life, sometimes your family gets the leftovers. Steve Harvey was no different. He wanted success so badly, he almost sacrificed the very thing he was trying to build it for, his kids. But instead of pretending it didn't happen, Steve owned it. And that's where this story hits different from the usual bum and family saga. Because this isn't just about making mistakes, it's about making them right. But let's not sugarcoat it. Healing old wounds isn't romantic, it's raw, messy. It takes years, not days. And for Steve, those years were filled with quiet gestures, heartfelt letters, therapy, and a whole lot of listening. There was no big TV reunion moment, just a man determined to show his grown daughters that he saw them. And you know what? They saw him too. What's powerful about Steve's journey is that he didn't stop at being better. He kept going. That brings us to the next chapter of this story, one filled with even more bumps, lessons, and breakthroughs. Because raising 2 daughters while building a career is one thing, but raising 7 kids across multiple marriages and family structures, that's a whole other mountain. Imagine being born into chaos, 2 screaming babies, 1 broke father chasing stand-up gigs, and a mother doing her best to hold it all together. That was Brandy and Carly Harvey's first chapter. Twin girls, same face, same birthday, same last name. But their relationship with their dad? It started off on shaky ground, and that shaky ground turned into years of silence. Let's get into it. Steve Harvey has said it himself. When you're young and broke, you think chasing success is the only way to fix everything. But the truth is, some things break while you're out there chasing. Those things were Brandy and Carly. They were born in 1982, back when Steve was still figuring out who he was. Back when he was selling insurance by day and telling jokes for 50 at night. And back when fatherhood felt more like an obstacle than a mission. It's hard to hear, but it's real. Steve loved his daughters, but he wasn't there. While Marcia, their mother, raised the girls in Cleveland, Steve hit the road, hustling open mics, couch surfing, driving state to state in a beat-up car. Sometimes he had no phone, no money, no address to even send mail to. His relationship with the twins slowly faded. Birthdays missed, calls unanswered, and eventually a wall that got higher each year. By the time the girls were teens, Steve was finally famous, but not exactly dad. Brandy once said, "It's weird when the world loves your father and you barely know him." Let that sink in. Imagine seeing your dad on TV, making millions of people laugh, and feeling like a stranger to him. Now here's the twist. Brandy and Carly didn't grow up bitter. They grew up better. Their mom raised them with discipline, class, and independence. These weren't spoiled celebrity kids. They were go-getters. Brandy became an overachiever early on, graduating from Spelman College, becoming an author, fitness coach, and founder of the wellness platform Beyond Her. She's all about healing, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Carly, her mirror image, leaned into speaking, mentorship, and philanthropy. She now co-leads the Steve and Marjorie Harvey Foundation's Girls Who Rule initiative and works in youth development. These women didn't ride their dad's fame. They built their own lanes. But still, something was missing. Let's talk about forgiveness for a minute. It's one of those words we throw around like confetti. But for Brandy and Carly, forgiving Steve wasn't a one-time thing. It was a process, years of therapy, long phone calls, tough questions, walls slowly coming down, and one key thing that made it all possible? Steve stopped talking and started listening. He didn't come back into their lives with excuses. He came back with humility. And more importantly, consistency. He showed up. Brandy told a story in a podcast interview about how Steve started calling regularly. No agenda, no TV dad speeches, just asking how she was, what she needed, how he could do better. He had to meet me where I was, not where he wanted me to be, she said. That right there, that's growth. One of the biggest turning points came when Carly got married in 2015. Steve not only walked her down the aisle, he gave one of the most emotional father of the bride speeches people still talk about today. He cried, not because he was performing, but because for the first time, he felt like he'd earned the title Dad. He'd missed the early chapters, but he was here now, fully. And Carly, she looked at him that day with love, not resentment. That's what makes this story powerful. It's not perfect, it's real. Let's zoom in on the dynamic between Steve and Brandy for a sec, because their relationship had some real work to do. Brandy is very much her father's daughter, ambitious, driven, sharp-tongued when she needs to be. And for years, she didn't just want an apology, she wanted accountability. There's a quote from her that goes, "Being a father is more than DNA. It's being present, emotionally and spiritually. I needed that." Steve took that to heart. When she launched Beyond Her, Steve didn't just write a check or show up for the launch party. He listened to her vision. He supported her voice. He let her lead. And maybe most importantly, he started saying, "I'm proud of you," more than "I'm sorry." That shift, it changed everything. But it wasn't just about healing past wounds, it was about rebuilding trust. And Steve Harvey, the man who's made a career out of making people laugh, knew he had to stop entertaining and start showing up like a man. Here's something Steve said during an interview on his talk show. "I used to think providing was enough, that as long as they had clothes, food, and a place to stay, I'd done my job. But now I know, your kids want you, your presence, your ears, your heart." That's a lesson a lot of fathers learn too late. Steve's just lucky he got a second shot. Let's not pretend this was some perfect fairy tale. There were awkward dinners, silent car rides, years of missed inside jokes. But over time, something incredible happened. Brandy and Carly didn't just forgive Steve, they included him in business meetings, in family events, in their kids' lives. They saw the man he was becoming and let him back in. And that's where things get deep. Because Steve didn't just change for his daughters, he changed for all his kids. Brandy and Carly taught him what presence really means, what listening sounds like, what fatherhood feels like when it's earned, not assumed. And that growth, it poured over into how he raised his sons, and later, how he embraced the children of his third wife, Marjorie. We'll get into that soon. But first, let's wrap this part with the biggest takeaway. Steve Harvey didn't start as a great dad. He became one. Through loss, through honesty, through effort, and through the love of two daughters who had every reason to shut the door, but chose to open it instead. So what now? Well, Brandy runs one of the fastest growing wellness platforms for women of color. Carly mentors young girls across the country and raises a family of her own. And Steve? He beams with pride every time their names come up. Ask him about his biggest accomplishments, and he won't say Family Feud. He won't say his best-selling books. He won't even mention his empire. He'll say, "I got my daughters back." That's the win. But hold up, the story's not over. Because while Brandy and Carly helped Steve become a better father, the next generation of Harveys added a whole new chapter. Everybody talks about Steve Harvey the comedian. But Steve Harvey, the dad of boys, that's a whole other story. Because if raising twin daughters taught him how to be present, raising sons, that taught him how to be accountable. And just like every father-son relationship, it wasn't always smooth. In fact, at times, It was complicated, messy, and painful, but it was also honest and real. And it gave us a glimpse of how a man can break cycles and build legacies. Let's talk about the other side of Steve's family tree, his sons. When most people hear the name Broderick Harvey Jr., they assume he's trying to live up to his famous father. Spoiler alert, he's not trying to live up to him. He's trying to live with purpose, his own. Born in 1991, Broderick Jr. is Steve's only biological son from his second marriage to Mary Shackelford. And yes, this part of Steve's family story comes with a lot of legal drama, headlines, and heartbreak. Let's start with the truth. Steve and Mary had a very public and very ugly divorce. Custody battles, lawsuits, media spin. It was a mess. In the middle of that mess, a young boy named Broderick. Growing up, Broderick Jr. didn't always feel connected to his dad. While Steve's career was booming, the Steve Harvey Show was in its prime, his stand-up was everywhere, fatherhood was once again pushed to the back seat. Sound familiar? But here's where things get different. After the divorce, Steve realized something. He couldn't afford to lose another child. He'd already spent years rebuilding his relationship with Brandy and Carly. He couldn't make the same mistake again, not with his son. So he did something simple but powerful. He stayed close. Today, Broderick Jr. isn't just Steve Harvey's kid. He's his own man and his dad's business partner. He runs Harvey Events ATL, a company focused on event production and branding. He's also behind Need Money Not Friends, a streetwear lifestyle brand that pushes ambition and self-reliance. His Instagram isn't filled with red carpets or daddy handouts. It's filled with hustle, with purpose. Steve talks about Broderick with real pride. "He's not in my shadow. He's in his own light," Steve said. But let's be clear, that didn't come easy. There were years where Broderick questioned if his dad really had time for him. Times when Steve was the world's dad on TV, but missed games, missed dinners. But the turning point? When Broderick started working with his dad behind the scenes, that's when they started talking, not just about business, but life, man to man, father to son. Broderick once said in a podcast, "My dad doesn't try to fix everything now. He listens first." That changed our whole dynamic. That right there, that's growth. Now let's switch gears. Meet Winton Harvey, born in 1990, Steve's youngest biological child. Winton is a whole vibe. He's artsy, introspective, stylish, and bold. He studied photography at Savannah College of Art and Design. And his work? Legit, clean, emotional, sometimes moody, but full of storytelling. Winton isn't chasing clout. He's chasing expression. And for Steve, a loud, flashy, suit-wearing, spotlight-loving kind of guy, raising a kid like Winton? That was a challenge. A good one. Here's the thing. Winton doesn't want to be famous. He wants to be seen, but not in the way tabloids define it. He wants people to see his art, not his last name. And Steve? He had to learn how to support a son whose dreams didn't look anything like his own. In one interview, Steve got emotional talking about Winton. "He's different from me. He thinks deeper, moves quieter. He's made me slow down and pay attention to the things that don't make noise." That's a masterclass in fatherhood right there. Loving your kid not for who you want them to be, but for who they actually are. Let's talk about the challenge Steve faced with both sons, raising black boys in the spotlight. Steve knows all too well the pressure, the scrutiny, and the danger that comes with being young, black, and visible. And so, he made a vow. He wasn't just going to raise his sons, he was going to prepare them. "The world ain't fair, so I teach my boys how to walk into it like kings, not victims." But here's where it gets real. Steve didn't always get it right. He's admitted to being hard on his sons, demanding, critical, because he thought toughness was love. It wasn't until later that he learned sometimes softness is strength too. There's this moment Steve talks about on his radio show. He and Winton had a fight, not physical, but emotional. Steve had said something sharp, thinking he was motivating him. Winton didn't speak to him for a week. When they finally sat down, Winton looked him dead in the eyes and said, "I need a father, not a coach." That broke Steve, but it also changed him. From that day, he adjusted how he showed up for Winton. Less pressure, more support, less teaching, more listening. That one sentence became a mirror. What makes Steve's story with his sons so relatable is this. We all want to raise our boys to be strong, but sometimes in doing that, we forget to let them feel. Steve had to unlearn what masculinity meant. He had to trade toughness for presence, volume for understanding. And that didn't just make him a better father, it made him a better man. So now, as of today, Steve and Broderick Jr. are building businesses. Steve and Winton are building trust. And both sons speak highly of their dad, not because he was perfect, but because he changed. That's the theme of this whole journey. You don't have to be the perfect parent, but you do have to be a present one. No step about it. How Steve became dad to Marjorie's kids. They say blood makes you related. But love? That's what makes you family. And Steve Harvey, the man who built his name cracking jokes and closing deals, made one of the boldest moves of his life when he said, "I don't have stepchildren, I have children." No disclaimers, no asterisks, no technically speaking. Just love, straight up. But here's the real story. Blending families isn't easy, especially when the world is watching, and especially when the kids you're stepping in to raise already have fathers. This part? It's not about fame. It's about trust, identity, and choosing to show up, even when you don't have to. Let's talk about how Steve Harvey became dad to Morgan, Jason, and Laurie. Rewind to 2005, Steve meets Marjorie Bridges, the woman who would change everything. He didn't just fall in love with her beauty, he fell in love with her strength, her grace, her ability to walk into a room and own it. But Marjorie didn't come alone. She came with 3 kids, 3 lives, 3 sets of memories, 3 worlds Steve wasn't part of yet. Now let's be honest, a lot of men would have hit the brakes. 3 kids from a previous relationship. That's a package deal some folks avoid. But Steve? He looked at Marjorie and said, "I got you." Then he looked at her kids and said, "I got y'all too." Let's start with the oldest, Morgan Harvey. Morgan's the reserved one. A little more private, a lot more focused. She's a graduate of culinary school and the founder of I Need Some Mo, a lifestyle brand that shares recipes, cooking hacks, and hosting tips for modern women. If you've seen her online, soft-spoken, apron on, doing her thing, you'd never guess the path she walked to get here. When Steve came into Morgan's life, she was a teenager, old enough to have opinions, old enough to remember life before him, and definitely old enough to spot fake love when she saw it. But here's the key. Steve didn't come in trying to play super dad, he just came in consistently. He showed up at school events, gave advice when she needed it, asked questions about her dreams, not just her grades. He let her warm up on her own terms. Morgan now calls Steve Dad proudly. And when she got married in 2013, Steve was front and center, not because he had to be, because he earned it. Then there's Jason Harvey, Marjorie's only son, and arguably the one who gave Steve the biggest test. Jason is creative, sharp, and ambitious. He's the founder of Yevra, a high-end fashion and shoe line that's all about excellence and originality. He's also a man who already had a father, so trusting a new one. Not easy, But again, Steve didn't come in swinging his name around. He came in building. Jason once shared that what made him respect Steve wasn't his money or his status. It was his consistency. A real man don't tell you who he is. He shows you. Steve showed up for birthdays, business ideas, breakups, bad days. And when Jason started his own family, Steve was right there, as grandpa, advisor, and proud father figure. Today, Jason and Steve are close, but it took years to get there. Respect isn't handed down, it's earned up. Now let's talk about the name everyone knows, Lori Harvey. Model, entrepreneur, red carpet favorite, tabloid magnate. But before she was a brand, Lori was just a little girl, one looking for someone to believe in hers. When Steve stepped in, Lori was young, still forming her sense of self, still figuring out who she was. And here's where it gets powerful. Steve didn't try to change Lori. He gave her space to evolve. He didn't box her into his expectations. He didn't demand she act like the preacher's daughter. He let her find her own rhythm. Lori's fearless, Steve said in an interview. She walks in her truth. I respect that. But let's be clear, Steve's also protective, especially when it comes to how the world talks about Lori. From high-profile relationships to media speculation, Lori's been under a microscope. And every time the internet tries to paint her as just another celebrity kid, Steve claps back. She's mine. She's brilliant. And she can date whoever she wants. 'Cause she knows her worth. Now that's a girl dad move right there. One of the realest things Steve ever said was this: you don't get to choose how your family starts, but you do get to choose how you love them. That's the foundation he built with Marjorie's kids. He never once called them Step. He introduced them everywhere as his children. On talk shows, in interviews, on red carpets, he gave them his name, his love, his presence. And slowly, they gave him their trust. But let's not sugarcoat it. Blended families are hard. There are different last names, different childhoods, different traumas. There are unspoken comparisons. You're not my real dad. Emotional landmines. And when you add fame to that mix, forget it. It's a recipe for chaos. But what made this family work wasn't some magic trick. It was the same thing that healed Steve's relationship with Brandy, Carly, Broderick, and Winton. Consistency. Day by day. Show up. Speak love. Repeat. Steve has said it over and over. The reason my family works is because I put them first. Not the show, not the brand, not the bag. The family. That means therapy. That means Sunday dinners. That means showing up even when you're exhausted from taping 3 episodes of Family Feud in a row. Because at the end of the day, no one cares how many people clapped for you on stage, if your own house is silent. Here's a story most people don't know. When Steve was offered the hosting gig for Miss Universe, he almost turned it down. Why? Because it conflicted with a trip he'd planned with his entire family. The network told him, "This is a global opportunity." Steve said, "So is being a father." He ended up finding a compromise, but the message was loud and clear. He wasn't risking his family's bond for a spotlight. That's rare in Hollywood. That's rare anywhere. Now let's zoom out for a sec. In total, Steve Harvey has 7 children, 3 biological and 4 through love. And if you ask him how many he claims, 7. No hesitation. He loves them differently because they're different people. But he loves them equally because that's what real fathers do. What's the big lesson in all this? It's this: fatherhood is a decision, not just a DNA test. You can be present even if you weren't there from day one. You can build trust even if you missed early birthdays. You can earn the title Dad even if you didn't give the kid your genes. Steve Harvey did all of that, not by being perfect, but by being real. Today, the Harvey family stands as one of the most blended, visible, and surprisingly grounded families in entertainment. And it's not because they never had problems. It's because they faced them together. Everybody wants to leave a legacy, but not everybody knows what that really means. For Steve Harvey, it's not just about money. It's not the houses, not the cars, not even the fame. It's about the people, the 7 lives that carry his name, his love, and his lessons forward. But legacy isn't built by accident. It's built through choices, often the painful kind. And Steve? He's made plenty of those. So how did a man who once lived out of his car become a blueprint for fatherhood, forgiveness, and generational growth? Let's talk about how Steve Harvey's journey as a father came full circle and how it's shaping everything he touches now. Let's start with a little-known story. Back in the early 90s, before the fame and the fancy suits, Steve was sleeping in his car, literally homeless, washing up in hotel sinks, living off crackers and canned goods. He wasn't just broke, he was invisible to the world, to opportunity, and sometimes to his own kids. He missed birthdays, missed milestones, missed time. That guilt, it stayed with him for decades. "There were nights I cried in that car," Steve once said, "not because I was hungry, but because I knew I was failing as a father." Most people would have let that shame bury them. Steve used it to build something better. Fast forward to today, he's got TV shows, a global brand, best-selling books, and sold-out arenas. But what he's proudest of? That his kids call him Dad, and mean it. Every single one. Brandy, Carly, Broderick Jr. Winton, Morgan, Jason, Laurie, 7 kids, 7 different relationships. But one core thread: redemption. Brandy and Carly, his firstborn twins. They're thriving. Brandy is a wellness entrepreneur running Beyond Her, a platform for mental health and physical fitness for Black women. Carly is a speaker and mom, balancing motherhood and media with grace. They've both spoken openly about their early distance from Steve and how they rebuilt trust as adults. "My dad didn't raise me, but he showed up for me later. That counts," Carly once said in a panel. That honesty? That's legacy, because owning your failures is a lesson in itself. Broderick Jr., he's not just Steve's namesake. He's his partner in business. He launched his own clothing brand, runs events, shows up behind the scenes, while letting Steve take the spotlight. And then there's Winton, the artist, not a performer, not a comedian, not even on social media much. He chose a path of depth, not noise, and Steve loves him for it. "My son don't talk much, but when he speaks, I listen." That's respect, and that's growth. Morgan, living the domestic dream with her own brand and her own family. Jason, building his fashion empire and raising 4 kids with Marjorie's grace and Steve's grit. And Laurie, let's be real, she's the most Googled Harvey child. From modeling deals with Valentino and Burberry to public relationships with A-list celebs, Laurie is unapologetically herself. And Steve? He defends her every time. "She's a smart girl. She's not out here chasing men. She's choosing herself. I raised her to know her worth." Love him or hate him, that's the kind of dad every daughter deserves in her corner. But here's where it all levels up. Steve's not just raising kids anymore. He's raising a community. In 2010, he launched the Steve and Marjorie Harvey Foundation, focused on mentorship, education, and fatherhood. Thousands of young boys, especially Black boys, have gone through his camps and programs. And Steve? He's there in person, every year, teaching, listening, crying with these kids who never had a father to show up, because he remembers what that feels like. I'm not trying to raise famous kids. I'm trying to raise whole people. And I want to help other men do the same. He's also gone global. Steve built schools and development centers in Africa, particularly Ghana, focused on education, values, and leadership. In a world obsessed with celebrity status, Steve chose to invest in substance. And the kids in his programs? They don't care about his suits or his punchlines. They care that he shows up, that he remembers their names, that he tells them they're worth something. Let's pause for a moment. What does it actually mean to break generational cycles? It doesn't mean having perfect kids. It means your kids don't have to heal from you the way you had to heal from your parents. It means changing the pattern, even if you have to drag your trauma through the fire to do it. Steve's dad was a coal miner, a hard man. Didn't show emotion. Provided, but didn't always protect. Steve made a choice. My kids won't just remember that I paid the bills. They'll remember that I loved them out loud. That's a father. That's a legacy. Now, let's talk about the real full circle moment. Forgiveness. Steve has been open about the messy parts of his past. The marriages that ended. The pain he caused. The pain he received. He doesn't dodge it. He uses it. If you see a man with 7 kids smiling, it's because he cried through a whole lot of years to earn that smile. That's the truth. Forgiveness from his kids, from Marjorie, from himself, is what allowed him to be the man he is now. He teaches it. He lives it. He leads with it. And maybe the most beautiful part, he's teaching men how to be fathers, even if they never had one. Through his books, Act Like a Success, his shows, Steve Harvey Morning Show, Family Feud, his foundation, and his life. He's telling men, it's not too late. You're not too broken. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to show up. So what's Steve Harvey's legacy? It's not his laugh. It's not even his empire. It's this: a man who messed up, but made it right. A father who wasn't always there, but became someone his kids brag about. A man who lost time, and then made up for it with presence. That's the real win. To every viewer watching this, maybe you're a parent trying to do better. Maybe you're a kid trying to forgive yours. Maybe you're both. Steve Harvey's story isn't about being famous. It's about being faithful to the people you love and to the person you're becoming. Legacy isn't about what you leave behind. It's about who you lift up while you're still here. So if this series hit home for you, if you saw yourself or your dad in any of these chapters, then do something with it. Call your father. Forgive your past. Hug your kid. Show up. Because the next chapter of your family's story, you get to write it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll look back one day and say, I wasn't perfect, heck perfect, but I changed the game. Just like Steve Harvey did.